there cannot be a conflict without negotiation.
Yes.
Because everything will still end up on the round table. Let people be able to go to the market. Let people be able to go to the farms. And because we are facing a lot of problems, we are not talking about security of lives alone. Food security and so many other areas of security.
Source for better ways of generating revenue. The House of Representatives is yet to approve this request.
Introducing the Big Issue Show. Hello and welcome once again to the Big Issue. My name is Buchi and I'm very glad to welcome you to this show where we do a deep dive into all of the issues that affect all and sundry in the 36 states of the Federation and of course the FCT. Today we are going to talk about security. I mean, if you have not been living under a rock, but even if you have been living under a rock, and perhaps you probably should be living under a rock if you're going to be a bit safer, considering what's been going on in the country today. This is a huge pain point for many Nigerians, from here in Abuja, where we're shooting this show, to Lagos, to the far north, to the southeast, to the southwest, everywhere where every Nigerian lives today. There is this impending sense of, or just not even impending, it's actually ongoing. There's this sense of a lack of security in our day-to-day lives. And that's what we're going to talk about today, right after this very short break. You're still watching The Big Issue. My name is Buchi, and today I'm joined with retired Major General Anthony Atolagbe to talk about our security situation and perhaps begin to talk about what the way forward is. Welcome, General.
Good evening, obvious.
Can I still call you General? I've never really known how to address former serving officials. Do you retain the last title?
For generals, yes, you just call general.
Okay.
It's fine.
You've been in the forefront of many of our security challenges in terms of response time. I'm aware that you spent a fair bit of time in Plateau State with the crisis that's there. You've also done a fair bit of peacekeeping missions across the world. So before I come into the internal security aspect, I want this conversation to progress from, the top of the line down, and we drill it inward. So let's begin with our territorial integrity situation, for example. We've had issues with Boko Haram, with IPOB, and all of that. So I want to sort of see what you think, your current assessment of the situation right now, considering where we've been and how we've come to where we are.
Okay, thank you. From me, I think the problems associated with security in Nigeria are multi-dimensional. And what happens in one geopolitical zone it's not the same with the rest of the other geopolitical zones. So we don't really have a kind of solution that we say can take care of everything the same way. So in the Northeast, we have what we call kind of counter-terror operations.
Yes.
In the Northwest, we can also refer to that as perhaps low-intensity conflict or counter-terror operation also. So when you move down south, we are tackling kidnappings. When you go to the east, it's agitation, and there's some elements of agitation also in the southwest. Yeah. So we can't just sit down and perhaps think that we can just formulate a plan that caters for everything. So what I would say in general is from some people, they might read some aspects of conspiracy theory into some of the conflicts, while some are perhaps due to failures on the part of government, their inability to address some of the problems. So I don't believe that whatever somebody is saying should be neglected. People should, government is there, based on the Constitution to provide security. Yeah. And if any government is not addressing certain issues and is bringing some elements of insecurity, it's just on the responsible side for the government to say, okay, fine, why don't we listen to these people and then let us see whether we can look for a way to resolve.
Let me see if I can redirect you a bit to begin with some of the issues. So, just as you've said, you described the Northeast, you described the Northwest, the Southeast, Southwest, so, looking at the different areas that we have these major issues, even the North Central parts of the country. So let's start, up north. Let's go up north. From maybe 2011 up to the about 5, 6, 7 years later, when the Boko Haram and later ISWAP was like in very, very firm operations. I wouldn't say control, but it was a huge trend. It was a big situation. They were the biggest security challenges, maybe not so much now. So I want to start with that one. Currently, it seems like news about Boko Haram and other territorial integrity threats seem to have dropped a bit off. Yeah. So is this consistent with things you've seen in terms of the danger? Is it still there at that level, or is it commensurate with the way that they've sort of fallen off the news media?
When you want to talk about perhaps the idea that maybe the threats have waned a bit, we must be looking at a kind of comprehensive arrangement that caters for all aspects. There cannot be a conflict without negotiation.
Yeah.
Because everything will still end up on the round table.
Yeah.
So whoever is talking to those in charge of security that negotiation is completely out of it, perhaps those of us who have been in several conflict environments, we know that it's not, it doesn't just go like that.
Yeah.
So that aspect I'm not seeing being displayed, pivotally as part of the areas to be considered when they are resolving the conflict. And so we have a commission also that is also catering for other areas of development, aside from the fact that we see the action of a particular governor in that state going the whole hog to see that resettlement of his people are being done by himself.
Yeah.
And these are some of the some of the areas where the commission also needed to have taken responsibility to ensure that these people are settled, and then their resettled houses are provided, money is provided for them to start business. And those are the ones that has to do with post-conflict areas or peace-building kind of arrangement.
Yeah, but are we at that level now? Because when we talk about resettlement and getting them back into their houses and post-conflict, do you think that, considering what the Northeast has seen over the past few years, are we getting to that point where we are now getting into post-conflict areas?
Okay, so you now see a situation where these guys have been constricted to a particular area, where they still come out to come and wreak havoc. So where the government is, as far as I know, is to wait for surrenders. So people surrender, they move them into a kind of demobilization phase, and then take them on training, provide funds for them to start business, and then they turn them into the society. So that also requires a lot of monitoring, because we can't really give it a zero sum and say that perhaps things will not happen again. These guys can filter into other conflict areas to go and join in. I have seen situations in the South where a lot of guys from the North were also part of the action that were going on in the South when the issue of the conflict there was going on. So, and these guys, they traverse just across any terrain because they look for money to sustain themselves, and then they go to fight. We see situation where people are driving around the entire country with a large sum of money inside their vehicle, going around paying families of these people that are in the theater. So, so there are a lot of areas to be covered when it comes to. But I think what we are not actually saying is to see this arrangement being synergized under perhaps one particular group of people. So government is doing its own. Federal government is also, that I'm talking about the state government now. Then the federal government also is also carrying out its own action plan. Where is the synergy? How are they coordinating? And is any of the group putting one face before the other? So these are some of the areas that perhaps they need to synergize and see how they can get things.
You mentioned about some of these threats sort of filtering into other theater areas, other areas of conflict and whatnot. At the point in time when the Boko Haram and the territorial integrity issues seem to begin to wane, we now saw in the Northwest, we now saw an increase in banditry, an increase in seemingly random attacks in communities and villages, which also sort of now added kidnapping and some robberies and whatnot. Do you think that there is a link between the pressure on the militants from ISWAP or Boko Haram? Is there a link, a finite link into the issues that the Northwest faced?
One thing is that we may not be able to delink them from each other, because at a point, some elements of Boko Haram were found on the northwestern part before this upsurge in violence within the northwest. But the experience in the northwest actually is derived from some of the issues that emanated from the settlement of elders, herdsmen and farmers' conflict at a particular point in time, mentioned by a certain governor in the North Central some times ago, saying that perhaps they had settled them and that they had refused to go. And then when these guys came in also, they find out that there are a lot of resources within the geographical zone that we are talking about. So they just settled in there and they started mining, getting a lot of money. And at the same time, those of them who could not get into those areas, also they got on the streets on major streets and started kidnapping people for ransom. So it was just one thing leading to the other, and then we are just faced with that situation now. And I want to think that the military is doing perhaps enough to see how they can make that also to drain it out.
And that's the question I was going to come to you next, because sometimes you wonder as to who should be responsible for it. I mean, I understand the territorial integrity threats. That's solely or at the first level, the job of the military to protect us against that, or to protect our territorial integrity. But sometimes when you have crime that's done by Nigerians inside Nigeria, one would expect that the first port of call would be the Nigerian police, whose job it is to defend us against internal threats, and so, or basically to apprehend crime. So, but it's interesting that you talked about the military rather than the police, and I would have expected that the police would be the force that's expected to be at the forefront of this.
Yeah, well, I agree with you absolutely, but I will also let you know that each country with its own style of doing things. We evolved from the military era into this stage where we are under the democracy. So, and you find out that under the military regime, when they push the police to carry out a certain action somewhere, and perhaps it's taking some length of time, they tell the military to go in. So it was quite easy.
Yeah.
But what we see today, I also think also is because it's not as if the police are failing, but then I think when the policeman is carrying an AK-47 and the person you are facing also is carrying an AK-47, then you now see that there is some measure of face-off now coming in. And I think also maybe because of the population of the police, maybe they don't have enough men to saturate the atmosphere, the landscape.
Yeah.
Perhaps that might have been the reason why the military now will now be. But there are actually certain areas where it's actually got beyond their capacity or capabilities, and then the military surely, like in the North Central, for example, that's where I was in Plateau State, taking charge of some part of Kaduna State also. It was a mix of military, that is Army, Navy, Air Force, some elements of mobile police, some elements of NNCDC.
Okay.
And then I will tell you that the force there, I mean, I work with them. We can't compare their capability with those that are deployed in the Northeast. So you see that to some extent, the response also will not be as strong as what we'll get in the Northeast.
Which again, one of the things I love about your answers is that they're giving me more questions. And when you talk about the need for the fact that when the police get overwhelmed and then we get to bring in the military, you and I both know that the military is trained to stamp out threats, not necessarily to engage within the community, spend time with the community and police. You're meant to shut down issues rather than police the issues. And so isn't that also another way of creating even more problems? Because sometimes we see reports in the news media where they talk about, the military did this, there was an accidental bombing of this place and things like that. Are problems not being created based on using the military more than...
I think I have a straight answer to that.
Yes.
Because the way the operation is supposed to be is that when the military comes in and they are able to bring down the situation, there is also a process of handing over back to the police so that they take over the terrain and secure the area. That we are not seeing in most places, and I don't know where we are not getting it exactly the way it's supposed to be, but there have been several reoccurrences of some of these situations where after you have handed over to the police and you think everything is stabilized, and then you now see a resurgence again. So I think that perhaps might have informed why the military holds on longer than necessary. But there is that procedure that when the police hands over to the military, and military have they have done the best to stabilize the situation, then there must be a drawdown and then a gradual withdrawal from the area so that the police can take over there.
You commanded in Plateau State, where we have one of the biggest hotspots, in upsurge of violence that just rises up at surprising periods. In December 2023, for example, the Christmas Day attacks or the Christmas Eve attacks in Plateau State that we saw that, lasted over days and we had scores of people dead. Is this also something that you've seen there, where you've handed over and then, violence has made you come back? Or is this something that the military has just not left there?
The deployment of troops to the North Central was as a result of some kind of analysis that was done some times ago. And what happened in 2010 when the safe haven or the operation commenced with the military, there were several killings going on. And we find out that the police were not able to stop those killings. So, and because this thing had been happening over the years, they now said, okay, fine, let us do some deployment within the area. And then, so you find a situation where there is a mix. In fact, I think when I was there, the population of the police was even, I think, more than the military. Because the feeling was that the military should only be within the very hot spots, while the police, especially the Mopol, will be the one to dominate the rest of the areas. And I think that is also what the situation is. But the way things run in those areas is that if you secure here today and you think the place is well secured enough for you to say, okay, let me move to a hotter area and put the military there, behind you, people will come to this place and come and start killing again. And some of the things that are also responsible for, and so you see that killings are just, it's either the military and the police that were deployed in the area when actually sometimes I feel that the landscape was one, not very good. It's not a very good terrain to operate because of the so many hills and gullies where these guys used to go and hide and then emerge from to go. And so pursuing them it used to be a problem. I was there and I introduced motorcycle operations because most of the means of transportation there were vehicles. And these guys use road tracks where they just ride their motorcycles. And so when I introduced about 60 motorcycles, it gave me the opportunity to catch up with these guys, especially when they strike in a particular place and we are called within good time. Okay. Then while there, I called the various parties and I told them, look, I won't come here and you see a situation where people are being killed unnecessarily. If you want to continue this killing, then I'll start arresting people. So I swung into action, collected some equipment, and then we started arresting them. I want to say that if as a force deployed there then, we didn't have any of those facilities. I had to call somebody in the higher office, and then they directed me to somewhere in the northeast that should be sharing their equipment with my own office. So I bring them down when there's any attack. But those are responses that we give after the attack must have taken place. And I want to say that perhaps the situation of the December last year also is not to say that several other people that have been there have failed. It's just that the solution to the problems have not been tackled. And what are these problems? A lot of things have been said, a lot of reports have been written about this situation in this particular area of the country. But as I speak, I've not heard of, I think it's just last week, I saw that there's a report that the federal government is saying that people should go and look into. While I was there, some suggestions were made. What were these suggestions? Let there be a military presence within these locations where this fighting or this killing goes on. That's number one. Let there be a barrack of the mobile police so that at any given time that something is taking place, you can just...
There's a quick response.
Yes, there's a quick response. That was what we're using the motorcycle guys for. But sometimes you just say, let me move my effort towards a particular location where you think there is some problems going on, and then this guy just walk back into those places, because it's not all the troops that are on that motorbikes, just a selected few of them that we trained, and then we just make sure that they are able to respond quickly to. So while you are just turning your back and thinking that, okay, this place is secured and they just come behind again and come into those areas to come and start creating problems. So,
one quick question before we go on break, because you talked about the fact that, you know, some of the equipments that you had to deploy, you didn't even have them allocated to you. You had to speak to the Northeast to share. And so this is part of the challenges we have, isn't it? Being properly equipped.
When we're talking about arrest, yes, this one is very important. And I always say that from my own experience, is not most of the deployments of the military don't. When you check the deployment of the police,
yes,
you see that there's a police station across the entire, like in a town like Abuja. You see so many police stations, but you see only maybe 2, 3, 4 barracks. All the soldiers are concentrated in one place.
Yeah.
So you now see that the police actually have the presence. And then when you talk about the equipment also, they also have the equipment that they can take quickly to any particular area and then use it to determine who must have come here to commit this crime. So that those kind of things are not within they're not readily handed with the military, though they have some. Yeah. But I am of the opinion that the police are
better equipped.
Yeah, more equipped.
So is this now an issue of willingness to actually do it?
So I have challenged security agencies on air like this.
Yeah.
I told and said, look, if there's a crime somewhere and somebody says, perhaps you see the responses to some VIPs In 24 hours, you have heard that there's been an arrest. But when the people are kidnapped and all these other things happening to the low-income earners or the people in the villages, you don't hear hear anything. But if we also check in the last 2-3 weeks, the responses of the police have been quite.
Yeah, they've been arresting,
Yes, interesting.
scores that gangs
Yes.
upon gangs upon
So
gangs.
you now see a situation where, regardless of where you are, regardless of who you are,
They can get you.
Now they go after, like when the children were kidnapped in Ekiti State, they went after these guys. And surprisingly, we just heard that the people have been arrested. The one who killed the general, who is the Oba of a particular village also. This kind of things, we don't even hear it before. We just hear it like it's news and everybody just parry it and then we keep moving. So, but I think that shows some level of improvement in the efforts being put in by the police, and more so that you are aware that the IG also has stepped up security within the FCT here. And what I say is that if you can do that within this location, then why don't you get a similar response team close to where these action spots are in the 6 geopolitical zones? And then you now say, okay, fine. At any point in time that something is happening around Mangu area or so place around Plateau State, there's a standby force equipped with maybe 2 helicopters that can just swing into action within a very reasonable response time, and then they will be able to secure the lives of the people.
It's very interesting when you talk about the fact that the police is stepping up, and I'm very inclined to disagree, which is weird. But during the research for this show, I did come about what the NSA, Noah Rubado, had said to the National Assembly last week, where he had pointed out that in 2023, only about 16 or just above 16% of the attacks that they recorded in the country happened under their tenure, which should have pointed to an improvement. It's really tough to believe any of this, especially with the way we're inundated with reports. But we'll take a short break now. When we come back, I want to talk to you about one of the outcomes of the conversation that the president had with state governors last week. You've been watching The Big Issue. My name is Buchi, and I've been in the studio with retired Major General Anthony Atolagbe, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Issue. My name is Buchi, and I've been in the studio with retired Major General Anthony Atolagbe, and we've been discussing Nigeria's security issues. I feel like if you watch any governance show over the past 10, 20, 50 years, if they existed, you would definitely have had 1 or 2 conversations per day on Nigeria's security challenges. And of course, The Big Issue is a no-brainer that we must include that. We were talking about, just before we went on break, I said I wanted to ask you about something that the president and the governors at their meeting last week, or the State of the Nation meeting that they had, they talked about state policing. And I know it feels like this conversation has been had time and time and time again, but at some point in time, it's probably a bullet we have to bite, or at least decide that this is not going to happen. Many people point to it as a maybe not sure banker, but a way to improve our security situation by having governors have nowhere else to hide. Some other people say, well, maybe not, because we've seen how authoritarian some of our governors can be, and that means just giving them even more power to be more draconian. What's your take on it? I know at this point it's more about opinions rather than intellectual insight, but what's your take on it?
Okay, for me, I think I'll just express an opinion, because some people, the opinions are divergent.
Yeah.
So you see some people saying that if you make it possible for a governor to have a set of policemen under him, he will use the group to shunt another group. And another school of thought is saying that, look, let them just come in, secure the area. And then I will say there is nothing wrong with having state police. And look, before those in power will have come to a conclusion that this is what is likely a workable solution, certainly they are receiving briefings. They have sampled how it works in other places. They have also taken briefs from their security advisors and other security chiefs on their position. Although we've not seen any document, but I am feeling that, look, this idea of fear of what you have not even seen.
Same, yeah.
I mean, playing out. It's not necessary. The way the thing works out is you state the area that the state police will be employed.
Yeah.
And if they go beyond certain level and that the federal government police can take over whatever thing they are doing. So if you stipulate all these guidelines and make it available to the various states, then it means if you go and bully somebody and the government feel that, maybe at the federal level, they feel that, look, certain things are going wrong in that state, they can deploy a superior force into the area to make sure, although it might bring some conflict, but then if it involves the president and the governor of that state, then they will know how to handle it and how to take over the situation from it. So there shouldn't be any fear. The most important thing is let there be security for the people. Let people be able to go to the markets. Let people be able to go to the farms. And because we are facing a lot of problems. We are not talking about security of lives alone. Food security and so many other areas of security. And except people are able to move around and live their daily lives, then people will just sit back and will be dying, and then we will still be feeling this level of insecurity. But when these people are there, the forest guards are also securing the forest, and they are deployed, taking care of all. They are armed. Okay, so nobody can just be wandering within the bush now and say, okay, he's looking for his livelihood when you are not even, and perhaps you don't even have any identity that connects you with the area. So these people will be handy to, and that's what all these Amotekons are also doing. They are doing very well. Part of this
so you're a fan of the composition of such groups as Amotekun?
If it provides solution to their problem and the place is secured, what else is left? Okay, the states have powers to do some of these things, and they have taken it upon themselves to do it. So for those who are not doing it, I'm sure they just don't want to spend money because they have seen that the thing is working in other states. So and if you check, nearly about more than 20-something states have a semblance of Amotekun running in their states. So what is left? There's nothing left.
So there's not much difference.
They are armed. You are paying them. You are securing uniform and everything for them. Okay, so what's a policeman that we cannot just go the whole hall and say, okay, look, let's start doing this thing.
Let's talk intelligence right now, because you talked about some of the challenges in Plateau State when you were commander. You have issues here, you're trying to respond to, you move troops and equipment across, and then boom, something is happening where you just exited and stuff. How much did you see, how much of a willingness from local residents, from community folks, when you were there? Was there a willingness for people to share intelligence with you, even when some of the culprits were people of the same maybe tribe and faith as
I will tell you for free that intelligence was very, very okay. What am I saying? There are things we do. Okay, you get some locals within these localities. And then we put them on salary.
Okay.
They are not known to anybody. They are just doing their own thing. Where we meet them, how they meet us, nobody can detect. And this is going on at every strata. Even at the federal government level, I'm sure these intelligence cells also, they have all this. So even when we arrest people, we also create moles within them to listen to their conversation and pass on what they are discussing to us. So getting information, I will tell you, the attack that took place when I was there in 2018. As soon as the attack took place, the attackers met in a mosque. And after their discussion, they came out, and as soon as the attack took place, I received 29 phone numbers from somebody who said he did not agree with the action that they are taking. That they are taking.
And so that helped you to track
And I got everybody arrested. And there was none of them that denied not taking part in the attack. Okay, so it's a thing that people, I mean, we are actually taught how to go about it, but then there are some volunteers
Also,
that
who
will
just
just come out on their own and say, look, in fact, there are even instances before the attack, and somebody will tell us there's going to be an attack tomorrow, and I'm not in support of it. You get a text message, and you people should be ready. And then we get the place secured, and eventually those attacks won't take place. So we get a lot of intelligence from people, apart from our own men. Also,
you deploy.
we have men of the military police that are just in mufti, moving around the locations, just like we deploy them like farmers, people who are buying farm produce, and then they just move around on daily basis as if they are just coming to buy goods, but on daily basis they come up and give us information on what is going on within the terrain.
But perhaps one final question, because when you talk about intelligence, you're talking about the day-to-day, the average individual who lives in these places. But we also know that if we're talking about security in terms of communal issues, in terms of things that happens in communities and villages, we have people who are pillars of the community, so to speak. We have traditional leaders, we have upstanding people. Is this particular demographic of people, in your experience, have they been more of a positive to the security situation, or do you think that sometimes you found them shielding people who are miscreants as well?
I think what I would say is that let's not be very particular about where I've worked, but we have had experiences where some traditional rulers have been sanctioned by governors in Zamfara State and maybe a few other states. And I think there was one recently. So you see a situation where we cannot rule out the fact that some of them don't get their hands immersed in some of these dirts.
Yeah.
So, but what I would say about Plateau State is that, in fact, before I got there, a lot of the rulers or let me call them there's a title they give them. Most of them were not within their localities. They had been chased out. You understand? So the impact that they are supposed to have on their locals were
not there. That.
So and then when they are not actually resident within the community, how do they impact the lives of the people? And so some of them are also involved. Let me say they are culpable, as I'll put it, because of some of them. We can't say that all of them will be 100%. So those kind of things, they exist. But I want to say that the part that the traditional rulers would have played perhaps could have assisted in helping to identify the people that are creating problems within their areas. But I think some of them also are afraid, because there are some boys within some communities, believe me, they are stronger than you can't tell when they can just come and hack somebody down. And I think because of that, a lot of them just decide to just hold it down and to make sure that they don't get armed or something. So I think they vary. But if it were the time that we were young, the traditional were fully in control.
Okay.
Somebody is walking into a town for the first time, you go straight to the other place to go identify yourself. If you are bringing cows to come and graze around the area, you go to the place, then they tell you, can you construct a hut somewhere on the edge of the town and then be grazing your cattle around the area? It was very smooth. But where we started having all these problems now, I don't know. In fact, I think we didn't even know when it started, because we were just thinking that it's a joke or maybe it will soon end. And then the thing just kept spiraling, and it took us to this level we are now.
So my final question brings me back to probably the first thing you talked about when you talked about negotiating, because I talked about the Boko Haram situation in the Northeast and tried to sort of come from 30 feet above the ground, tracing it down in terms of how it has reduced or seems to have reduced right now. And you pointed out that it cannot end without negotiating, without coming to the table and sort of finalizing that conflict. And now I want to stretch it to the part of the country where I'm from, that is the southeast. Do you think that that's also something that can reduce the insecurity that's there? Because what started as an agitation has very quickly morphed into blatant criminality, and where most of us do not feel safe there. And so, is this something that you think can be applied there, or are we still at the stage where you still need force?
No, for me, I mean, I've been into negotiation and mediation.
Yes.
So I was a military expert too in a mediation and negotiation team in Burkina Faso.
Yes.
Where we were negotiating between the government of Mali and those of the MNLA, Akemi. Those are the warring factions.
Yes.
In northern Mali. And what I would say is that there is a military force approach, and there is a political approach. It is under the political approach that aspect of mediation and negotiation now comes in. And I'm saying this here because I think I've traveled so wide that you can't consider a citizen of a country, no matter how aggrieved he is, you can't consider the person as an enemy. Okay? Yes, in a more subtle term, maybe an agitator, or if in fact in the military we try to remove the word enemy, we use adversary, somebody who is contesting the same space with you or something like that. So to some extent, even that, and that's the reason why even within the military, we don't say herders and farmers. We say armed men.
Okay.
And armed men are fighting.
Yeah.
And when you group herders against farmers, then you are already identifying them and say, oh, this one is from this language, and this one is from this other language, and this one is from this other religion, and this one is from this other one. So as much as possible, within the context of our managing conflicts within the country like this, that is multi-ethnic, so you need to control the use of language. And then also, well, it is true that maybe in the Southeast, I've not really delved so much into the cause of agitation, of course, which I know some level of it, but what must have transpired to the extent that we have some people sitting outside the country calling on the people within to rebel and to do other things, and they happen even in other conflict zones. In fact, most assault into like a kind of insurgency, they come through the borders of a supporting country or maybe another nation. So, but to me, if I'm to tell the president, I'll say, look, Father, you are the father of everybody. Okay? Let's see how we can start working out something. Because just telling people that, or just like pushing people aside and saying that, they have been giving problem and this is, I don't think it's right. Okay. Because the thing we keep rearing is ugly head. But you do it to a certain level, you call the elders in the area, you call the traditional rulers in the area, we have pushed this thing to this level. How far? And then the person tells you, okay, let us get back to the community. Let us pass this information to the people. And then you keep, at least you will have taken one step. And the same thing with, you see, in the Northeast now, it's not as if they don't know the sponsors because I remember that there was a time the ex-president Obasanjo was volunteering to go and speak to the people that were involved. So it means that they know some people. Yeah. So, and if these guys have leaders,
there's someone to speak to.
There's somebody to speak to. And that's what happens at the political level. As rough and as comprehending as Chastelo was, despite all the gruesome murdering that this thing that they were carrying out in Liberia, there were still some top political people that, in fact, they will even sign an agreement with you now and tell you that I will have to get back to my masters. And it goes back sit within those, among those people and say, look, this is what we agreed in Abuja. This is what I signed. And those people say, number 1, 3, and 6, we will not agree. He cannot go it alone. He comes back to the negotiating table again. So I think not even making an effort to see how we can negotiate is not a good thing in the first place. So because for every action, there will be a reaction. And for every kind of distaste or discontent by any group of people, certainly, if it is not addressed, it will be creating insecurity. It will be creating agitation. People will not be able to go to live their normal lives, just like what we have been experiencing in the Southeast. To me, I think the government know what to do. So I'm sure somehow we have another government now. Perhaps they will have a listening ear, maybe better than the one that was there before. You understand? And then I look forward to see a situation where it's not something that can be resolved in. Sometimes conflict take place 5-10 years, you are still pushing. You know, if we check all the conflict areas around the world, some have been on for 50-something years.
Absolutely.
But they are still managing it gradually. But discarding and not even listening at me, I don't think. I think it's good. Negotiation, coming to a round table is very critical to managing conflict.
All right, thank you very, very much, General. This is actually where we draw the curtain on the show. And I consider this particular show sort of like setting the tone, providing a base for us to engage further on the issues of security. And I'm very glad that we've been able to take it from a bird's eye view from the top and then drill it down and even come back to what the way forward is. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, and I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You've been watching The Big Issue. My name is Buchi Onyebule, and I've had retired Major General Anthony Atolagbe with me in the studio. I'll see you soon. But before you go, take time, subscribe to our show, listen to, watch all the episodes that we've done before, and I'll see you soon.